Week 15 of the 2025-26 NBA season is over, which means it's time to run it back. This is Run It Back, NBA Week in Review. I'm Jose Salviati, editor at thepeachbasket.net, and this is the show where we recap the week that was in the NBA by sharing the only objective NBA power rankings, the stats standouts, that's the best to do it by average in the week that was, and then we take a look at viral news in the NBA in a segment we call Full Court Press. Finally, we highlight the marquee matchup for the week to come. We start like we always do with the only objective overall top 10 NBA power rankings anywhere. You can read more about how we get to these rankings and see the entire list at thepeachbasket.net. Let's take a look at the top 10 at the conclusion of week number 15. First thing to call out, and this is very interesting, no teams moved in or out of the top 10 this week. It's pretty unusual. All of the shuffling happened entirely within the same group of top 10 contenders. Additionally, no team in the top 10 went winless, and only one team in the top 10 went the entire week without a loss. We start with that team. At number 10 for the second week in a row are the New York Knicks. They had a perfect 3-0 week, but they didn't beat good enough teams to really make an impact in the top 10. They remain at number 10 and are 30-18 overall. Number 9 belongs to the Toronto Raptors. They were 1-2 in week number 15, and that cost them. They dropped one spot, coming in at number 9. The number 8 team had a 2-1 week, a little bit better than Toronto, but the same fate. The Nuggets dropped one spot from number 7 to number 8. They're 33-16 overall after week number 15. Boston, like the Nuggets, went 2-1 in week number 15, and like the Nuggets, it cost them a spot. They just weren't good enough to hold off the team above them. We'll talk about them in a minute. The Celtics come in at number 7. They're 30-18 overall after week 15. That number 6 team are the Minnesota Timberwolves. They had a very good 4-1 week in week number 15, and that was enough to move them all the way up from number 9 to number 6. They're 31-19 overall. The next two teams stay in the spot they were in the week before. Coming in at number 5 for the second week in a row are the Phoenix Suns. They were 3-1 in week number 15. They are 30-19 overall. And just above them at number 4 are the Houston Rockets. They also went 3-1 in week number 15, and they're 30-17 overall. Now, the San Antonio Spurs couldn't match that 3-1 record for week 15. They were only 1-2, but it was enough to keep them just above the Rockets. The Spurs come in at number 3. They're 32-16 overall. This is their 7th week in a row at number 3. The top 2 teams have been playing leapfrog. First it was Detroit, then it was Oklahoma City, then it was Detroit, then it was Oklahoma City. This week, after week number 15, the Thunder dropped one spot after a 1-2 week in week number 15. And they are our number 2 team. They're 38-11 overall, which means, of course, that the number 1 team after week number 15 are the 3-1 in week 15 Detroit Pistons. They're 35-12 overall and are once again the best team in the NBA record-wise, according to our objective overall top 10 power rankings. That's it. That is the top 10 after week number 15. If you want to see where all 30 teams land this week, please visit thepeachbasket.net. Now let's shift our focus to the players. These are the best to do it by average in week number 15 of the 2025-26 NBA season. These are the best by average in shooting, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, points, and game score. We start with a name we're probably going to hear a lot. We haven't heard him yet. He hasn't been on the leaderboard yet. But again, we're going to hear this name a lot. That is 19-year-old Cooper Flagg. This teenager averaged 41.5 points over his 2 games played to lead the association. Incredible week for Cooper Flagg. The top sniper. This is the best average of 3-point field goals made in week number 15. That belongs to Luka Doncic. He averaged 5.7, made 3-point shots over his 3 games played. Cooper Flagg, again, was the top field goal maker. He averaged 16.5 makes over his 2 games played. Now, Karl Anthony Towns has been in the news a little bit. His offensive game appears to be down. It definitely is down. But boy, he's rebounding. He led the entire association with 17.7 rebounds on average over his 3 games played for the New York Knicks. Let's see if that does anything to keep him in New York a little bit longer. Donovan Clingan led the entire association with 7 offensive rebounds on average over his 3 games played, and Cat of the Knicks was the top defensive rebounder, 12.3. Andrew Nembhard was the top assist guy in the NBA. He averaged 10.7 assists over his 3 games played. Miles Turner sent back the most shots on average, averaging 4 blocks over his 2 games played. And Asur Thompson was the top thief, averaging 3.3 steals over his 4 games played. The top game score for the best overall game. This was his first game back in a while, and he made it count with a game score of 33.6. That's Nikola Jokic. He played 1 game and led the association in game score. The Denver Nuggets survived without Nikola Jokic, and now Nikola Jokic is back, which is scary for the West. Looking ahead to week number 16, the best matchups both include the Denver Nuggets. We just talked about them and Nikola Jokic. And both of these games happen at Denver. First, the number 1 team in the East, Detroit Pistons, which have a tough West Coast trip this week, will be in Denver to take on the number 2 in the West Nuggets. Then later in that week, Denver will host the number 1 in the West, Oklahoma City Thunder. Looks to be a great week of basketball in Denver with both the number 1 Eastern Conference and Western Conference teams coming to visit the Nuggets. Let's see how the Nuggets do against both number 1s. We end with a segment we call Full Court Press, where I ask AI for its thoughts on viral trending NBA press news as we head into week number 16. And this is what it came up with. We talked a little bit about this. There's some Giannis trade buzz. Dylan Brooks called LeBron overrated, which is really an overrated clickbaity title. He said, listen, LeBron's overrated now. He's one of the all-time greats. He's effectively just saying LeBron wasn't who he was. And for the first time in several seasons, you definitely see that he's missing a step. So I'm not too hung up by what Dylan Brooks said. The Cavs acquire Dennis Schroder, and Anthony Davis is on the trade block. I feel for AD. Lots of good topics, but I really want to focus, interestingly enough, on Dennis Schroder. The 32-year-old Schroder is averaging 12.8 points per game this season on 34% shooting from deep. Those numbers line up pretty well with his career averages of 13.9 points and his 3-point shooting percentage of 34%. It actually is exactly right at his career average. This season, he's been very productive, just like he has been his entire career, which spans 12 seasons. What's interesting about Schroder is that in those 12 seasons, he's now played for 11 teams, the Cavaliers being the 11th. That's who he got traded to. He started at Atlanta, then he played for the Thunder, Lakers, Boston, Rockets, Raptors, Nets, Warriors, Pistons, Kings, and of course now the Cavaliers. There's no doubt that a reason and maybe a story as to why someone who has proven to be very dependable and consistent, there's no doubt a reason and maybe a story as to why someone who has proven to be such a dependable and consistent NBA player has gotten moved around so much. But without any inside information on why he gets moved as often as he does, I went down the rabbit hole of figuring out which player had played for the most teams over his NBA career. Before I get to number 1, here's a list of players who have played for 12 teams, one more than Schroder over their career. Chucky Brown, Jim Jackson, Tony Massenberg, Joe Smith, and Garrett Temple. Now, a casual fan of the NBA is likely not going to recognize any or many of those names, but the reality is we're starting to see a trend here. Each of those players was a very dependable and consistent NBA player throughout their career. Do you see the trend? Which leads us to what then, by that definition, would have to be the most dependable and consistent NBA player in NBA history. This player had a 14-year career in the NBA, which only ended in 2024, and he played for 13 teams. Yeah, that's just about one team per season on average. That player was Ish Smith. I see a lot of similarities between Smith and Schroder. Of course, they're both dependable and consistent NBA players, but they're also both guards that were never stars, but definitely made a mark in their play. The moral of the story then is, of course, if you want a long career in the NBA, work to be a dependable and consistent player, just like Smith and just like Dennis Schroder. That's it. Week number 15 of the 2025-26 NBA season is in the books. Join us again next week after week number 16 when we once again run it back.